So on the foldable that I just gave you, and on yesterday's warm-up that you had, okay, you were asked to factor. And a lot of you have forgotten what factoring was, what it was asking you to do, or whatever. Factoring was what our last unit was about, guys. So I told you get plenty of practice factoring, and you will, because we're using factoring to solve. Okay? Factoring was where you either could use the Xbox method that I gave you, or you could use the star method. In today's notes, I'm going to use the star method because to me, it saves space and is the quickest way to do it. So when we do the star method, what goes in the top of my star? A times C, actually. Okay, A times C goes in the top. What goes in the bottom? The B is what goes in the bottom. Okay. And when I'm talking about those letters, I'm talking about in standard form. My quadratic would look like this. Okay, it would have A paired with the x squared, B paired with the x, and then C all by itself as a constant. When you are solving, this also has to equal 0. Okay. What else do we need to put in our star? What am I missing that I get from my problem? I also put my A right here. These two numbers, okay, those two numbers have to multiply together. Okay. This is just a refresher. Okay, so those two numbers that you fill in multiply to give you whatever AC is, and they add to give you B. Okay, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for two numbers that when you multiply, will multiply to give you whatever that top number is and add to give you B. So inside of our foldable, we have what's called the zero product property. The zero product property is a property that you are all familiar with. It's probably one of the only properties sometimes that everybody knows. I don't have to worry about somebody coming up here to Algebra 1 and not knowing that if I ask them what 385 times 0 is, what does that equal? 0. If I ask what negative 972 is times 0, what does it equal? 0. Well, what if my zeros first? What if I do 0 times 49? 0. Okay, that's what the zero product property is. It just means that if two numbers multiplied together equals 0, that means one of those numbers must be 0. One of those factors specifically. Okay? Either A or B has to equal 0 if that the whole thing equals 0. Because we know that anything multiplied by 0 gives you 0, right? Okay. So In order for the zero product property to work, the very first thing that you need to make sure is that your problem is equal to 0. Okay? If it is not equal to 0, then you have to make it equal to 0. Move everything to one side, cancel it out on the other so that it equals 0. This is the biggest mistake that I see that people forget. You can't use the zero product rule if that you're not saying that it equals 0. Okay? Step 2, okay, after you've set it and made it equal to 0, then you're going to factor them. Factoring is what I just reviewed really quickly, okay, to factor the polynomial. Then the third step is to apply the zero product property. And I will show you what that means in just a moment. The last step is to check your solution. Okay, that's always a good idea, to check your solution. Okay, substitute it back in and make sure that you actually get 0 in your original problem. So look at example 1. Okay. So example 1. First question, does it already equal 0? Yes. Okay, so step 1's already done for us. Step 2 says to factor it. Is it already factored for us? Yes. Okay, this is the factored version. Okay, the factored version is taking something like what's down here in example 4 and making it look like example 1. Okay? That is what factoring does. So step 3 says what? What does step 3 say? Apply the zero product property. So to do that, that means either this parentheses, right, is equal to 0, or this parentheses is equal to 0. One of those things have to be true for the zero product property to work, for it to equal 0. And now we just need to finish solving. So how do I solve x minus 3 equals 0? How do I solve for x? What do I need to do? I heard somebody say it. Add 3 to both sides. Okay, so x equals 3. Or, okay, how do I solve the other one? Minus 4 from both sides. So x equals negative 4. So now if I substitute 3 back in, which is my step 4, right? So if I do x minus 3, sorry, I need to replace that x with a 3. So 3 minus 3 times 3 plus 4. Notice that I used 3 for both x's. So 3 minus 3 is 0. Right, that's what we wanted. And 0 times 7, does that equal 0? Yes, so that one works. Okay, if I check my other one, I would have negative 4 negative 4 minus 3 times negative 4 plus 4 equals 0. Okay, so what is negative 4 minus 3? Negative 7. So I've got negative 7, and negative 4 plus 4 is 0. Does negative 7 times 0 equal 0? Yes. Okay, so my answer is x equals the set of 3 comma negative 4. It does not matter which order you put those numbers in, because they're in set notation. They're in the squiggly braces. So that is our answer for that one. Put a box around it so you know that's your answer. You will also see it answered sometimes like this. Okay. Example 2. First question, first step, is it equal to 0? Okay. Step 2, is it already factored for us?
No. Yes.
It is. Okay, we've got 2 sets of parentheses here. It's already factored for us. So now we are just separating them. So 2x plus 5 equals 0, and x minus 7 equals 0. I have to make it into 2 equations at this point in time. So take a moment and finish solving. So go ahead and work them out. So when I worked them out, I got x equals negative 5 over 2. Leave it as a fraction. Or x equals 7. Well, let's substitute them back in. So, and you can do this check on your calculator, right? So 2 times negative 5 over 2 plus 5. Does that equal 0? Or sorry, now setting that equal to 0 times. Ran out of room over here. Okay, times negative 5 over 2 minus 7. Okay, you can put it in the calculator just like that and see if it equals 0. The calculator will do all of this work for you. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so right there, 0 minus or divided by negative 5, isn't that 0?
It's not dividing.
Or
We're subtracting because it was adding 5, so we're subtracting 5 to cancel it. If I were to work this out without my calculator, this first one would give me negative 5 plus 5. And this would give me negative 19 halves. But this equals 0 times this fraction. Doesn't matter because this one equals 0, so it would equal 0. And so that would check out. Okay. Did anybody get it put on their calculator? Did it say it was true?
Yes.
Okay. You can type that in your calculator and put the equals 0, and it will tell you true or false. Okay. Do you know where the equal sign is on your calculator? Right underneath the control. Okay. So that one checks out. So now let's plug in the 7. So we've got 2 times 7 plus 5 times 7 minus 7. Does that equal 0? No. 14 plus 5 is 19. 7 minus 7 is 0. And 0 times anything would be 0. So yes, that would work. Okay. So our answers do check out. So x equals negative 5 halves and 7. Okay. Can y'all get example 3 started on your own?
How do you finish writing this?
Again, use your calculator to check your work. We're not going to have time in class to go through and check every single one of them. Okay? But use the calculator to check them. So we do get x equals 1/4 and x equals negative 2/3. Give everybody just a few moments to get that down. If you've got that down, I want those of you that already have this down and are a little bit ahead of us to look at example number 4 and think about what do we need to do to start on that one. For those of you that might not get all of the notes, I have been saving all of these notes as PDFs and putting them under the agenda after you have class. So if that you miss something in class or you're absent even, yes, if you're absent, I prefer you to watch the video so that you get the lesson as well. But at the very least, the in the notes themselves are posted on the agenda. Okay, not actually on the link, but in Google Classroom. If you open up the agenda, you'll see extra files there under the agenda. Those are the notes for the classes. Okay, so example number 4. What do we notice about it? It's not what? Okay, it's not already factored for us. What else? What's the very first step tell us to do?
It doesn't equal 0.
It doesn't equal 0. So we have to make this equal 0. So how can I get rid of this 8 so that this side equals 0? Not divide by 8. Minus 8. Yes, subtract 8. Sorry. Subtract 8. Okay. So that cancels out that side and equals 0. Does that change my x squared? No. Does it change my 3x? Does it affect my negative 10? Yes. So negative 10 minus 8 is what? Negative 18. Now that we have it equal to 0, now we can factor it. What's going to go in the top? A times C. So 1 times negative 18, which is what? Negative 18. What goes in the bottom? 3. What else do I need? My A's. Right, on each side. Just the 1. Now I need to figure out what is going to give me negative 18 when I multiply, but add to give me 3. The first question I ask myself is, are they going to have the same sign? Well, let me walk through it for everybody this first time, but yes, you're already ahead of us. You got it. So, do they have the same sign? No, they have to have opposite signs. So one has to be positive and one has to be negative. My bigger number is going to have the same sign as whatever my bottom number has. So start with negative 1. So negative 1 times, right, positive 18 is going to give me negative 18. Do they add together to give me 3? No. Right? So then negative 2 times 9, those multiply to give me negative 18. Do they add to give me 3? No. So then I've got negative 3 times 6. Do those add to give me 3?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so that's what I'm going to use here. If you've already put your plus and minus, make sure you put them correctly with your plus and minus sign. Now I'm going to take that information and I'm going to use it in my factors. If it has a 1 in it, it's not going to reduce any. So 1x plus 6 times 1x minus 3. Equals 0. Now am I back at the same steps as above? So I've got x plus 6 equals 0. X minus 3 equals 0. Finish solving. Now for this one, when you substitute it in and put it in your calculator, plug it back into this original equation, not your factored one. Because if you made a mistake factoring, then it might tell you that your answer is correct when it's not. Be sure, so we're going to do this one on your calculator, be sure that anytime you have something squared be sure to put it in the in parentheses. So negative 6 squared, because that's what I'm substituting in for x, plus 3 times negative 6 minus 10. And in your calculator, if you want to try it, put equals 8. Okay? We're not looking for it to equal 0 because we're using our original equation. Okay? So if we substitute all that in there and it equals 8, then it checks out. Did it say true?
Yes.
Okay, so that one works. So then do the same thing with the next one. 3 squared plus 3 times 3 minus 10 should also equal 8. For which one? Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. We're going to run out of time, so I'm going to move on. So, right here. Again, first step, we've got to make it equal what?
0.
0. So we've got to cancel out. Okay. Be sure you put them under the ones they match. Okay. This cancels, leaving me 0 on that side. That's what I want. Negative 3 plus 3, that also cancels. Doesn't change this. Negative 6x plus 7x squared, sorry, x squared. What happens in my asterisk or my star if that my c is a 0? If I put a 0 in this top up here, because 0 times 1 is going to be 0. Well, anything times 0 is going to be 0, right? Okay, so we need to, you can still do it in the asterisk. It still technically works, yes, but you're making it harder on yourself than it has to be, because at this point there is actually a greatest common factor. What is it? Do both of them have an x?
Yes.
Yes. So my greatest common factor is x. And if I pull that x out, what is left with x squared? X. And what's left with negative 8x?
8. Negative 8.
I still have two factors. Okay. I've got x equals 0. And I've got x minus 8 equals 0. I only really have to do any work for one of them. If you filled out this star, you would still get the same things. You would just end up with it looking like x plus 0, right? Which we don't need to write a plus 0. So, example number 6, I'm going to leave for tomorrow because you won't have any on today's assignment with a number in front of your x squared bigger than a 1. So we will finish that example tomorrow because we're going to continue solving by factoring tomorrow. So I'm going to come around and pass out your Assignment,